Alok, Travis, and Kat, each carrying luggage of different sizes and shapes, entered my room, their expressions serious and determined. Kat was the first to speak. Darling, consider this your graduation ceremony. And with that, she pulled out a makeup kit from her suitcase. They had arrived as guardians of love and restoration, bringing with them talismans of beauty, makeup, pearls, lace, feathers, and dresses. That's a page 203 of Sipping Dom Pérignon Through a Straw, Reimagining Success as a Disabled Achiever by Eddie Ndopu. Written entirely using my one good finger. This is a nonfiction memoir. It's about, oh goodness, 228, 228 pages. The book came out in 2023. And I'm reading this book as part of my interview with Vampire Inspired Readathon, which is just a celebration of the adaptation and the books jointly. And for the readathon, there are prompts. So I'm fulfilling the prompt, Claudia's alienated by those around her. I'm going to read a little bit of the synopsis for the book if you're not familiar and you missed my TBR video. So global humanitarian Eddie Ndopu was born with spinal muscular atrophy, a rare degenerative motor neuron disease affecting his mobility. He was told that he wouldn't live beyond the age of 5, and yet Ndopu thrived. He grew up loving pop music, lip-syncing the latest hits, and watching The Bold and the Beautiful for the haute couture, and was the only wheelchair user at his school, where he flourished academically. By his late teens, he had become a sought-after speaker, traveling the world to address audiences about disability justice. And so the author is accepted with a scholarship to Oxford, and this book is basically about that experience at college. The author hasn't written any other books. They are a disability rights advocate. He is one of 17 global advocates appointed by the Secretary General and the United Nations for the Sustainable Development Goals. The book is medium paced. The program that he was in at school was a Master's in Public Policy program at Oxford University. So there's a couple of different elements that are going on throughout the book. As we learn about this person's like firsthand experience at college and the hurdles they face, which is lack of financial support by the academic institutions. There's also issues with like the physical structures, as well as what they're up against with like social dynamics. And so I do kind of want to cover those briefly. This is supposed to be like a short book review, but I'm going to try to keep it short. Just keep in mind, this is basically going to be a spoiler discussion for this nonfiction work. That's the only way I could really like discuss it. So I'll start off by saying that I enjoyed the book. I'm glad I read it, and just kind of like learning the different like facets of what the author has to navigate. So as a human rights advocate, we have to really reflect on how does this author advocate for themselves. So as I mentioned, that there is like this financial gap. He was accepted to college, but the college left out like, okay, how are we going to cover funding this person? Because even in their essay for acceptance or to try to get in the school, he made it very clear that he is disabled and the needs that he has. But there was a huge gap of the cost for him. And I just don't think the school is really equipped to support the author in like several different ways. So they may have wanted him there, but they definitely, it wasn't just about a gap, it was about making things difficult for him. And that's frustration for us as the readers, as well as for the author themselves. And so the author basically took initiative before even having an answer from a school, before even attending, and started crowdfunding money just to help out, because it turns out they weren't really going to help him out financially for the cost difference of his needs. There's definitely an element of found family, as well as their own mother being a source of strength. And that was part of like the financial support, as well as emotional. There are other advocates advocating for him, right? So not only is it his mom, but his mom can't be there all the time. So sometimes it would be his found family, his what he would term his squad, was really championing for him along the way. Uh, which is also a discussion because let me get to this because I don't think I mentioned it yet. There's intersectionality to the author's experience, right? They're disabled, they're gay, they're a black man. And so at times, he just brings up like one particular instance where he felt like he did everything he possibly could, going back and forth at the school. He's reattending, and then there's like another financial situation. And I definitely felt like the school put roadblocks in front of him as well. And it wasn't until uh, one of his friends of the many that was like advocating for him said, "You know what? I know you've done everything, but let's just try. Let me just try and go with you." Spoke to administrator, and it was like frustrating, like the realization for um, the author to realize that, well, maybe this person can't talk directly or talk a certain way to the administrators because his friend happened to be a white male. And so I just found that like dynamic interesting, in like filling the gap for someone advocating for him and having to navigate uh, those dynamics, right? Because of the author's intersectionality and experiences. So I appreciated the author writing about that as well. Then there's the issues of like physical structure, things that me as an able-bodied person I would not know until the author brought that up. For instance, if he's at a school where there's pebblestone walkways, that's not going to do for him because he's in a wheelchair, and it's kind of like getting whiplash all the time. So there's just this like lack of consideration on the part of the school for how he was going to navigate from one space to the other, as well as like a lack of uh, dorm room. And also, this is someone that needs medical aids at his side. So, what we start out with before he goes off to college is that he has one particular aide that's just done an incredible job. And now that he's off to college, he needs like to fill in that gap because also doesn't have his mom to cover like the night shift. So now this person needs two uh, medical assistants in some fashion, but also just a lack of compassion from different medical aides because he went through so many, and some of them are just outright neglectful. And I would say like on the verge of abusive in terms of neglect, but the author doesn't use those words. That's just like my interpretation. There's also like a social dynamics. Um, the author just outlines how when able-bodied people interact with him, how he has to smooth things over and like compensate for other people's like social awkwardness or social faux pas. And so on top of that, there are times where he downplays his medical needs, which is like something he shouldn't do. Like there's you see how much he advocates for himself, but at other times there's parts of his needs that he just kind of pushes away. And I also think that comes from other people, even medical aides, being so apathetic instead of being there for him and having compassion. And yeah, just socially not wanting to be a burden to others. Sometimes I feel like that's what's coming across in the book. People also at times like talk over him, like through him, but not really with him. And so those all that is going on. I would be exhausted. So it's just a lot that he has to navigate. There is something that really stood out to me, and I'll tell you what. There is the fact that this person is an academic achiever. They are disabled. They move through the world a certain way, and the author doesn't outright say this, but I felt like on some like unconscious level, there's this like false sense of protection that he thinks academia is not going to give him in some ways, with his academic excellence, I should say. But that's not really, it doesn't really exist. And that reminded me of somebody else that made a contribution on the back. So I should have known they knew each other, and it just didn't dawn on me. Alok Vade Menon made a contribution to the back, a review of the book. They know each other because they're both advocates. They're friends. The first quote that I said also includes Alok as one of their friends. Alok has also done an interview. I could have sworn it was in Australia, I believe, and spoke on also being someone that's a high academic achiever and thinking with all their, intellectualism, with all their academic achievements, that's somehow gonna protect them from bigotry and violence, and it just doesn't. And so that stood out to me because I saw that happening to this author in ways, and that actually made me think about Alok before I even realized that they knew each other. I just was really thinking about that interview. It like really stuck out to me. What else? I don't want to forget everything because I really enjoy this book and the conversation that the author's having. So yeah, I think that's it for my review. I'm sure I'm going to forget a couple of things. It's definitely worth picking up just to get a sense of the author's experience. Lastly, I'll add how every step of the way, there's other people also chipping away at the author's like dignity, and that he's just trying to hold on to his dignity. That's also something that stuck out to me, but I'll leave it there because I'll keep rambling. So now that I've reviewed the book, spoilers and all, I'm going to answer the 3 questions I usually know that are my standard for my interview with the Vampire Inspired Readathon, which is, why does this character have this book on their shelf? So why does Claudia have this book on their shelf? I feel in some ways like the world feels like the Twilight Zone, and that's an experience that I think the author and Claudia could relate to, in the ways that the world seems like ill-equipped to accept them or just have compassion for them. And also, the author speaks to like being alienated by institutional structures. And I would also say not just like structures in terms of like physical structures, but I just feel like in the sense of like red tape. And I see that for Claudia as well. When she goes to Paris, she wants to be accepted and loved and be a part of this found family, in a sense that she lets her guard down. And that was just like the wrong move, because the theater troupe, that's my cat. That's right. That's Ginger, I know it. oh, the theater troupe feels like they want to apply these rules that Claudia has to follow, but they're actually very wishy-washy, don't really follow them themselves. And so I also think that speaks to how, like, another level of the fact that Claudia could have lived all along, because her character was aged up in the show. So I think it actually adds to the tragedy. But yeah, so I think that's why Claudia would have the book on her shelf, just the Twilight Zone of it all. All right, second question. Did this book contextualize a character for you? In some ways, yes. I think it just like put an extra point on the fact that Eddie had his squad. Um, so although sometimes it must be eternally difficult to navigate the world, there's just, he feels the support of other people. As where Claudia didn't, she was just used kind of like a rag doll, and was just there in service to somebody else instead of being accepted for herself. So that's something um, that also stood out to me and kind of recontextualized the character. It's like something we already know, but it just points it out more and more to me how much of a lack of support that Claudia had. And lastly, what book would you recommend the character? I would put another book in Claudia's hands, although I think this is going to stay on the shelf. This is going to stay on her shelf. I would just like her to add My Life Growing Up Native in America. This is by a variety of authors. So it's going to be like a bunch of like nonfiction, short essays, if you will, of different like indigenous authors. I am well aware of one of the authors. I can't think of. I know they're on here. Lady Shug. Oh yeah, yeah. Lady Shug is on here. I actually know them from Instagram, and I like their jewelry, and I buy their jewelry from time to time. But yeah, I think that there's a lot that speaks to when the world feels like they're against you, or just outright are. Outright, you step out the door and the world's like working against you instead of with you. How people carve out found family community, and find other ways to try their best to navigate the world. And so I just think that would be just like a nice addition to Claudia's shelf. But if you have any suggestions, please put in the chat about what other books you would suggest to Claudia, or if you would like to answer one of the three questions or all three questions I always pose at the end. Feel free to join in. Let me know if you read the exact same book I'm reading, or if you decided to pick another book to fulfill the prompt about Claudia being alienated. And I hope you enjoyed this review. And just remember that life is definitely chaos. So be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and read more books. Bye.